Welcome to another Geography Endeavour Plus video with me, Mr. Garrity. Today will be quite content driven as we will be looking at the New Brighton fieldwork and what we actually did on the day. This is more of a whistle-stop tour, but there are moments when you can pause the video and have a go at some questions based on what we did during the day as our form of practice. As a quick disclaimer before this video begins, just by listening to the video will not magically make your grades improve. This is called passive learning and is not as effective as active practice. If you want your grades to improve, you need to actively practice the revision strategies and the instructions from the video. As a quick reminder, why did we go to New Brighton? The first and easiest reason is because it is accessible and a short distance to get there. It also has the areas of interest, in particular for our physical question and for our human question, namely for physical, the sea defences and how they improve human life and activity use, and the regenerated versus non-regenerated areas. It is also worth noting that it is a relatively safe area, as we found out during our risk assessment. Before travelling to New Brighton, we had to understand what were the risks we may face. A few common ones might be a trip, slip or a fall, which we would mitigate by wearing appropriate footwear and walking where it is sensible. In addition, there could be cold-related illnesses depending on weather, so we were advised to wear appropriate clothing. There would also be appropriate signage around the area, and here pictured are a couple of other risks that you could have otherwise noted down. For the journey itself, we would use a licensed and insured coach company to get to the area of interest, and we would wear a seatbelt on our journey. Our physical question or inquiry would have two elements to it. Our aim would be to investigate the impact of sea defences at New Brighton, namely the groins that they had built there. The reason for this is because we wanted to see if they had an impact on the way in which the local community would use them. So this would be a social and possibly economic impact of the sea defences. To do this, we would have to look at, do the sea defences physically work to change or interrupt the coastal processes, and by doing so, do they have an impact on the local community? As part of our physical field work, we would take a sketch of the area of interest. The benefits of this is we can focus on details that are important to our inquiry, as opposed to a simple photo, which may be hard for others to decipher and connect to our fieldwork. In terms of the groins themselves, we were measuring the drop height. The drop height is the distance from the top of the groin to the layer of sand. Our hope was that on one side the groin would have a smaller drop height than the other. This would show that more sand would be being collected on one side than the other. This would show an interruption of longshore drift by the build-up of sand on one side rather than the other. This would prove that the barrier is working. The reason we chose a drop height is because it is a number, it is a numerical piece of data, which makes it very good for data analysis later. To pick our places of where we would measure the groin, we used a systematic approach where we would measure out 5 different locations that were 2 meters apart.
Mommy! Oh boy!
The way in which we would take the measurement is we would use a meter ruler. We would kneel down as best as we could in order to make sure our eye line was where the top of the groin was, and we would take the measurement.
Go.
Having taken the measurement, we would note this down. In order to improve the accuracy, we would do more than one measurement at each location and then use an average for our data analysis. Having looked at and measured the drop height of the groin to understand if the groin was working, we now needed to see the impact of the sea defence on the community. We would try to do a tally survey, which again is a numerical piece of data and better for analysis later. The way we would do this is we would stand on the promenade above the beach. We would do 2 sessions of waiting for 10 minutes to tally how many people were doing certain activities. I recommend you pause the video here to have a go at practicing our 3 given questions. As well as our physical inquiry, we have our human question and human inquiry. Here, we were trying to investigate if there would be a difference or an impact on tourism if you regenerated an area. So we would look at a regenerated area against a non-regenerated area to see which may lead to more tourism. To collect our data, we would complete an environmental quality survey, also known as a bipolar survey, where we give certain aspects of the environment a score from one extreme to another, 0 to 5, where 0 was actually quite awful or terrible, and 5 was highly decent or of high quality. The reason we do this is because it applies a number, it is a numerical piece of data, which is easier for analysis. There is a subjective element because you as an observer are doing the judging, and you are subject to your own opinions and your own biasing. We would look at the regenerated area and the non-regenerated area. We would look at the same aspects, for example, the amount of litter and say the amount of vandalism that was in the area. Overall, each area would receive a score, which we could then compare with the highest score, presumably being the highest quality environment. I again recommend a quick pause of the video to have a go at our 3 practice questions. In terms of our overall findings for the physical inquiry, we found that the groin collected more sand on one side, which was the primary wind side, and did interrupt the longshore drift natural process. And in our tally survey, people did use the beach and promenade areas for multiple activities, which we could write as a conclusion as seen before you. The findings for our human inquiry were that there were higher levels of tourism and activity observed in the regenerated area compared to the non-regenerated area, as per the scores from our environmental quality survey. This leads to the conclusion that regeneration would lead to more tourism in a place like New Brighton. As our final piece of practice, I recommend these 2 questions.